Hi, I'm Matt from HockeyReviews.ca, and this is specifically the Bauer Elite Seamless. On here it says compression fit as well. Base layer review. So I only bought the pants because at the time I had more shirts than pants for base layers, and I figured I really didn't need to buy a whole set of Bauer base layers to get an idea of it. So I just bought the pant, and we are going to review this because it is like their $89 one. I think it's their most expensive base layer they have going right now. It's in a ton of their marketing and advertising on pro players from their catalogs and social media posts or just like their website. I haven't actually seen it on any pro players though. I might be wrong with that. I haven't really been looking that closely, to be totally honest, but I'm going to review this and I'm going to give a bit of a comparison between some things I have on here just because Bauer has some claims on this, and I'm going to actually compare them against other base layers and things like that. I use a ton of base layers. I've talked about this over and over again. I recently reviewed very poorly the Zenkai base layers, which made all my equipment into a total swamp. And now we are going to look at this. And so some of the technology on this is, one, it's a seamless design, but really there's always seams. You can see it on the inner piece right here where the seam is. But seamless generally means that a lot of the stitching on it goes away. So you can see there isn't one on the side, and down the side of the leg, it's just all one piece of knit throughout it. And then there isn't really stitching at the top either. And when it wraps over itself, it has tiny bits of stitching through it, so you can't really feel it. It's more comfortable in the body. I honestly love it. And their other technology on this is Heiq, smart temperature, or it's called Smart Temp specifically, and fresh technologies on here. Now, Bauer has been removing a bunch of their licensed technologies recently. 37.5 is one. Poron for all their foams is another one. And yet this is actually licensed technology. Heiq is a Swiss company. Now, for the Smart Temp, they say that it decreases the temperature of the clothing while being worn by up to 2.5 degrees Celsius. And the fresh helps fight odors, so you don't have to wash the clothing as much, and so it doesn't smell as bad when you're wearing it. Now, I will say on that last part is something I kind of tested with the Zenkai gear, where you could shake it off because it was supposed to be waterproof and you could shake the sweat off. You didn't have to wear it, where it basically did work for a bit. This is the opposite. You have to wash this every time, no matter what. This thing smelled awful after me wearing it, and it would kind of linger, to be honest. So it did definitely need to be washed after every single playing of this. I did wear it in back-to-back games. It was absolutely drenched, and I left it out, and I would go back to the spot where I leave it out to dry, and I wouldn't want to put it on again because you absolutely smelled what was in it. Could have it been worse? Maybe, but it really didn't do anything in that regards, and I would have to still wash this just as much as I wash everything else that I use. I've had people ask me over and over again of what socks I always recommend, and I've been using Cutshield for a while now. I have multiple stuff from them. So Cutshield is a company out of Canada that makes cut resistant socks, and these are their Pro Air 6, which means it's an ANSI level 6 for cut resistance on here. Full review of it up there so you can check it out. But I now have a coupon code with Cutshield, so if you want to support the channel, you can check out the link in the description to Cutshield, buy some socks, which I think are honestly one of the better socks on the market. I absolutely love them. They're pretty thin and they are cut resistant, and they're not too hot either. Use my coupon code, you get 25% off, and it helps support the channel. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel and you don't want to buy anything hockey related, you can check out the links in the description to buy me a coffee. Anything that goes through any of the links always comes back into my channel so I can make more content and do more videos. Now, speaking of that temperature thing and kind of their technology behind it, Bauer used to have something called 37.5 on their apparel, and it was on their equipment. Basically, the idea of that is it was supposed to make it so when the clothing got that warm, it would actually help evaporate the sweat on your clothing itself. I actually have a couple base layers that Bauer has made previously that have that tech on it. Felt kind of did work because I felt like the base layers, even when they got really wet, they ended up kind of drying a bit quicker than something else. With this, I mean, I don't know if this is actually making this garment 2.5 degrees Celsius colder than it would normally, but it runs really hot, like ridiculously hot. I love seamless clothing, and that's what this is. And this says compression fit, which I'll talk about in a second, but this is advertised as a seamless base layer. This is a large XL, and honestly this thing fits me long, and it's not all that tight, to be totally honest. But I love seamless clothing, and honestly it's a point where if you have seamless on it, chances are I might buy it and wear it. This is a seamless shirt I have from Old Navy, and it is absolutely fantastic. You can sweat in it and wear it, and I sweat a lot, and I find that when I sweat in it, it doesn't, one, smell that bad, two, it dries pretty quickly, and three, it just breathes a lot better than a lot normal type of t-shirts and clothing. So I love seamless type of clothing, which is why I ended up buying this. Again, that temperature thing where it's supposed to make it so it cools you down. This thing is way too thick. Obviously this is a seam and it's folded over, but this thing itself is so thick, you can't really see your skin through it or anything when it's stretched because it is so thick. This thing is warm. I don't know how this is a performance, well, it's like even their elite level base layer, because it is so thick and so warm. It instantly heats you up all the time. Yes, I run hot and I sweat a lot. I wore this for player and for goalie, and both times I was just soaked afterwards, which happens sometimes when I'm playing, but this garment was also just totally soaked. And when you look at some other kind of seamless shirts, this is a company, obviously Compress Sport. I've had excellent experiences with them for their socks and a bunch of other clothing. This is also one of those seamless designs. You can see it doesn't have a seam on the side, and the thinness of this compared to that Bauer one, and yes, this one also has a ton of holes in it for venting, which looks really weird on you, but it works really well. And when you actually go to the material itself, you can see when you stretch it out, you can actually see your skin under it because it is so thin. Now, this thing itself, when I wear it, it is a lot tighter than what the Bauer one was. This is designed in Europe and Switzerland specifically, so all their stuff kind of fits tighter than North American stuff. But this thing, when you're wearing it, you can feel the air coming through with this cold part. Yes, the base part of it gets wet and it stays wet. It's not awkward though, and it feels like okay when it's wet. It doesn't feel like soupy, and it doesn't feel like it's disgusting on you, but it has awesome venting through it. You can see the back, how much of this design and kind of knit pattern goes through here, so it does have venting all throughout it. And this was originally designed for long distance running and trail running and stuff like that, and I think cycling as well. This thing is pretty great, and it's not my favorite base layer, but it is solid. I had durability issues with it, but we're not reviewing this one. I'm just showing an example of how great materials like this can be in the seamless material and how they work really well. I always wear seamless stuff when I go to Europe for hiking, whether it be in the summer or the winter. It's basically the best clothing I find to wear under jackets and things like that. It's fantastic. This, honestly, I could wear in cold weather stuff because it is so thick and it is so awful and it's so thick and it doesn't breathe at all. It's super warm. It makes you really warm. It kind of turns your gear into soup as well because it's so wet and so gross in it, where a bunch of other stuff, when you get it wet, it doesn't really make a huge difference. And when I talk about getting wet and stuff, obviously this isn't a real test because it's not sweat, but you put water on this, and I'm just trying to squeeze a lot out, and it came out a lot. And you can see, one, it kind of is water repellent a little bit, and then it just soaks in eventually. It's obviously going to happen. So same with sweat, that's going to happen. When it gets wet, it really feels wet a lot, and it doesn't really feel like it dries out. And because it is so thick, when that is wet, it just feels thick and wet on you, and it's not great. And there's like zero breathability. This thing, since I just got it really wet from coming off and soaking off, but to be totally fair, we're going to do another little squirt here just to get a total fair scenario. That one, you could see squirted more off right away, but once it gets in there, it still does get wet and it becomes even more see-through, as you can see. But when this gets wet, it's not super awkward to wear. Yes, it's wet and you can feel it, but it just feels like it's much more manageable and doesn't feel like a wet, sloppy garment on you. It feels really tight on you. You notice you're wet, but it's not gross. Where this thing, it feels very wet, and honestly, it's not comfortable, and it feels like it's heavier. That stuff, it doesn't really feel heavier. This one feels a lot heavier. Now, also, when I'm talking about like seamless things like this, I mentioned I wear a ton of different things. This is one of the shirts I wear. These are also shirts I wear, which I have now gotten wet. These are from Lululemon, and I'm not a huge Lululemon fan. I don't think people should always go buy their stuff. The reason I have so much of it is because I live right next door to an outlet, basically, and they have crazy pieces of clothing like this, where this shirt's normally like $160 or something ridiculous. And this is also a seamless design, and on the side you can see it has like taped seams on it, and same with down here where there isn't actually any sewing, it's just a taping. And this is one of their kind of seamless designs, and it's that kind of knit material, but again, you can see your fingers through this. So when you actually wear this, it's extremely comfortable to wear, and when it gets wet, like it is right now through it, it's not awkward, and it actually feels pretty good. And this is so much lighter, and it is stretchy. Well, both of them are stretchy, but this is so much lighter that it just feels nicer on you, and it doesn't feel as thick as the Bauer one does. And this one normally is more expensive. I pay like $35 for this though. But again, I live near an outlet, so it's not really fair. But stuff like this is absolutely fantastic, and one of the reasons why I like that seamless type of clothing. This is a great piece of base layer I wear all the time. I don't overheat in it, and it feels really good, whereas the Bauers just feel terrible. And another piece of here where it's not quite as seamless, but again, Lululemon, tape seams, stuff like this is fantastic. It works really well as a base layer, and yes, like you can feel it gets wet, everything's gonna get wet, but it doesn't feel like it soaks into your body and into the garment, where the garment is so wet and thick and awful. This is just like night and day difference. To give some credit to Bauer here, this thing is incredibly comfortable. It feels great on you. If you want long johns, this is great. It's a little expensive, and honestly, at $90, you can get merino wool ones, which are going to be warmer and more comfortable, and it's merino wool, so it will actually work better for like odor and things like that, and it will dry better too. It's fine. It's comfortable like as a piece of clothing, and it's actually pretty nice. And I love, like I mentioned, the seamless design on it. The body part doesn't really work all that well. I find you actually do need a real band on here and not just like this band like this to actually hold it up and stuff. This doesn't fall down necessarily because I can hike this up high enough and it stretches high enough that it doesn't fall down, but it's just kind of awkward, and it should have that band on it. But this is just like a really poor implementation of what I was hoping this to be. This just was way too hot, and I'm really surprised Bauer made this for their elite level of line and performance. If they made it as like a outdoor clothing thing, because they're doing so many clothing collabs with like Lululemon now, that they could have done something with being an outdoor pond hockey type thing or wearing outside as a base layer. It would be fine because it will keep you warm. You don't want to be warm when you're playing hockey, so very weird that this was actually approved and done. The other thing on here that's really annoying is this is labeled as a compression fit, and I see this a lot. People talk about compression for Under Armour and things like that. If it doesn't have the actual compression rating on the site where you're making the purchase for, which this doesn't, it's not really compression. So I talk about these core shorts a lot, and core shorts have compression ratings. Core short is a real compression garment that actually does something. If it doesn't have that compression rating on it, probably not doing anything. Really, it's not doing anything because really people just say compression is marketing things now. This is just a marketing thing. The compression fit, yes, it says fit. It's not really that tight, and this is a large XL, and it's honestly feels kind of loose on me, and I'm kind of chunky, so it's kind of all over the place. I am super disappointed in what this was. This retails at $90. I didn't pay that, and it still wasn't worth it. So even at like 60% off of this still wasn't worth it. And there's better products out there from different companies like Decathlon or Lulu if you look at their outlet stuff, and it's just way better. I've also spent less money on compressed sport stuff and more money on compressed sport stuff. I think this shirt was like $40, and normally their stuff is fantastic, and you just get a better quality thing that feels like it's actually made for like athletes. And this thing feels like it's made for comfort and warmth. And if I have to go shoveling in the snow this winter, which I will have to do, this is actually a good base layer for me to do that. Keep you warm while I put snow pants over top, and it would be pretty good, to be honest. As an actual hockey garment, it's pretty bad, and that's 2 in a row of hockey garments I looked at that have been pretty bad, the Zenkai and this. So that's about it for this review of the Bauer Elite Seamless base layer clothing. Not the top, but it's the same thing, and I really like this material. It's super comfortable. It feels really great to wear it, not when you're playing sports or when it's cold out, it's great to wear it, but when you're actually playing a high intensity sport that you need to be cooled down on, and you need to not feel like you're wearing a heavy, soupy, really wet piece of clothing, these are not the products for you at all. So I definitely don't recommend going down that route. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you want to see me review a specific piece of gear, like a specific base layer, let me know in the comments, and also reach out to that company on social media. Let them know, hey, you want to see hockey reviews, review your stuff. Greatly appreciate it on my end. Hopefully get on some radar so I can test some stuff out. More base layer stuff will come in the future with Heiq, so make sure you check that out as well. Thank you very much for watching this video. Remember to like this video, subscribe to YouTube, follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Links are in the description. If you want to support the channel and you're buying hockey equipment anyways, check out the links in the description too. Hockey Supremacy if you're in Canada, Pure Hockey if you're in the US. Clicking those links, making a purchase gives me a kickback so I can keep buying more gear and doing more reviews. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel without buying anything hockey specifically, check out the links in the description too. Patreon and buy me a coffee. Everything through any of those links always comes back into the channel so I can keep making more content and doing more reviews. Thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.
You're watching HockeyReviews.ca.